Okay, here's one thing that really sandpapers my crotch. And it's one thing that everybody says, how sharp is it? How sharp is it? How sharp is it? Roar, roar. How sharp is it? Oh, God. Um, there's one thing that every professional photographer knows, is that sharpness isn't everything. Oh, well, it's certainly important, i.e. the resolution, the sharpness of the lens, which depends and infers how much detail is captured or capable of capturing if you have a decent camera, and not necessarily the quality of the detail that is captured. So you have extremely sharp lens that has a lot of other bad attributes. So it's kind of like a beautiful chick that has herpes underneath her skirt, right? This is basically, it's like, oh my God, she is sharp. It's like, that girl's got herpes. Ooh! She's not so sharp now, is she? This is how everybody else judges lenses. Like looking at a pretty girl across. Man, she's pretty. It's like, yeah, she's still, yeah, she's no good. Wow, but she's so pretty. That's how everybody else is judging these lenses. Is strictly based upon resolution or sharpness. Accutance, bokeh, autofocus speed. I mean, all these things are points to consider. Like, what is the bokeh of the lens? I mean, whether it's a 7-bladed aperture, a 6-bladed aperture, a 9-bladed aperture, a rounded bladed aperture is going to tell you what sort of bokeh it's got. How fast is the lens, and also, if the lens is really fast, how does it actually render the out-of-focus details for great bokeh? Make a great portrait lens. I mean, it could be the sharpest lens in the world, but if it's got shitty bokeh, then you may not want it for a portrait lens. Some people consider weather sealing. I don't know how many peckerwoods are out shooting shots in the pouring rain, but they're actually all sealed. People are like, oh my God, it's weather resistant. Every professional out there that knows more than 10 things about lenses, got 2 brain cells to rub together on lenses, they don't give a damn about weather sealing. I mean, they really don't. A, their gear is insured, and B, they're only sealed against invasive weather, not pervasive. In other words, if you think, well, my lens is weather sealed, I'm going to stand out in the rain and take shots of this naked girl, you're gonna get fungus growing inside there. None of them are sealed against pervasive weather, so weather sealing doesn't really matter for jack crap. Autofocus speed. Maybe the best lens in the world, but what sort of focusing system does it have? Is it a screw drive lens that is driven by the motor of the camera? Does it have an internal silent wave motor? I mean, is it damn fast? Or even at its very best. You have the best camera in the world with the fastest autofocus speed in the world, but I throw like a screw drive lens on there like this, it ain't so fast. It's like, why is this lens so slow? I got the fastest, best, most expensive camera in the world. It's like, yeah, it's not the camera, dude, it's your lens, because it is a screw drive lens. So that's a point of consideration. Micro contrast, something that really nobody talks about. The people in the Zeiss world call it Zeiss Pop. Zeiss certainly has no claim to fame on this. I'll soon do a lens on top micro contrast lenses. This is perceptual depth versus rendered depth, the micro contrast. This is due to the tonal gradation spectrum that is actually transferred through the lens. Very important for low light and close tonal foregrounds and backgrounds. Incredibly, incredibly important for black and white work. If you don't have that intertonal contrast, we used to call this back in the film days, we'd call them silver prints. Obviously a lot of it's based upon whether you're good at processing your film, that helps some, and how you're able to print. But if you didn't have it actually, the intertonal information on the negative, you didn't have it, period. And that's still the same in digital. I mean, you can actually bring out a wee bit of that in post, but not much. You really can't. You can't make appear there what isn't there. Even Photoshop can't do that. Some people have argued to the contrary, but it's a damn fact. You can't put it in there. I mean, even Photoshop can't add the intertonal values. And so this is very, very important. To me, this is actually as important as resolution, because I can show you a lens that is not that damn sharp, but has awesome micro contrast, and 99 people out of 100 will go, man, that lens is awesome. It's like, well, that lens is not very sharp. What do you mean it's not very sharp? It looks sharp to me. No, that lens is kind of sharp, or pretty good sharp, but it's actually got awesome micro contrast. Oh, what's that? Never heard of it. Yeah, it's because you have been reading photography magazines, and they have rotted your brain. Translational or perceptual depth. The higher the micro contrast, the better the perception of depth and detail. Micro contrast in the lens be able to differentiate between smaller and smaller details and more nearly similar tonal value. So this micro contrast is capturing all the intermediate tonal ranges which contribute to the realism of the shot, especially in low contrast compositions. For example, like a pile of wood, just these things that have very low color or tonal contrast. And when you got a lens with great micro contrast, it'll make that really jump out at you, if you have a decent exposure, that is, anyway. Render depth. Okay, so we got micro contrast, which is perceptual depth, and then we have render depth. This has to do with the electrical nature of the glass. Oh, what do you mean electrical? Every lens is an electrical circuit. Glass is a semiconductor, and has to do with binocular disparity and the depth from the low element count prime lenses, how much aspherical glass or ED glass, these ED doped glasses would actually change and improve the chromatic aberration. See, every lens is a trade-off. You can make a lens have perfect lack of chromatic aberration, but if it renders really, really flat, like some of these like 20 plus element lenses, like this lens has got no chromatic aberrations, and I'll point out to people, yeah, but it sucks. I was like, why is that? It's got no chromatic aberration and it is really sharp. It's like, yeah, but it's got bad color saturation and poor render depth. Well, I don't know what you mean by render depth. And I go, that's because you have not tried many lenses. Your spectrum of experience is what I call narrow, limited, bupkis, novice. So you can't talk about me like that. I got 9 lenses and I know what I'm talking about. Oh yeah, you do? Okay, let me know when you've tried a few hundred different lenses, then you'll tell me about that. This is the second aspect, and it's readily visible. All you have to do, like for example, is bring up the Flickr page for like the Nikkor 180mm f2.8 or the Zeiss 35mm f2. There's hundreds of lenses that out there that have great render depth and micro contrast. The lens might actually have really great rendering. Typically, it is the case that lenses that have really good micro contrast also have really good rendering depth. Though that's not always the case. Okay, the second thing, vignetting and flare. We all know what that is. Chromatic aberration, lateral chromatic aberration, or axial chromatic aberration, which appears as color fringing along high contrast edges. Like if you're shooting a little white flower and the rest of the background is green grass and the sun shining down that little tiny white flower, you'll see bad purple or green fringing. It's an axial or longitudinal chromatic aberration. The lateral and axial chromatic aberration are sometimes also called transverse, and like I said, longitudinal chromatic aberration. This aberration is when an imperfect lens design causes a point of light in the source or the image to render incorrectly. As I said before in other videos, lenses can look really good at f4, f5, 6, and up, but where a lens really lifts its skirt and you go, herpes! Or you go, oh, that's awesome, man. This one lenses are opened wide open. And so anybody can say, well, I got this lens, and this is a picture taken at f4, and it's like an f1.4 lens. Well, that's really good, but that doesn't mean shit. It's like, what do you mean? This is a great picture. I was like, well, yeah, it is. The only problem is that is a f1.2 lens, and you're taking the shot at f4 or f5.6. That doesn't really show or lift the skirt on that lens to tell you whether that lens is a piece of crap or not. Oh my God, what are you talking about? Like, oh my God. It's like, what do you even say to people like that? Color saturation. Last thing. How good does a lens render? Too many lens elements destroys the light. Glass destroys light. Doesn't matter how expensive the lens is. The lens can be really sharp. Like people talk about the Zeiss Milvus and their other lens, which is $5,000 plus. Like, it's really, really sharp. Like, yeah, but that sharpness isn't everything. What do you mean? This lens is really sharp. You know, you're just a schmuck because you can't afford this expensive lens. Now, I could afford it. I've used it. I'm saying that every photographer that's got more than 2 brain cells know that resolution or sharpness is not everything. It's not. Nikon's #1 money-making lens, 24-70 2.8, that lens is not that sharp. It's not. But it has a lot of really other awesome properties. It's a fast 2.8 mid-range zoom lens. It's perfect for weddings and portraiture. It's got great micro contrast, great color saturation. It's got a lot of other really awesome attributes. But it's not that sharp of a lens, and it's also kind of fragile. But that lens is used by so many people because it is awesome on so many other different attributes like bokeh, autofocus speed, micro contrast, translational perceptual depth, render depth, vignetting, distortion, chromatic aberration, accutance. So you gotta do this. I mean, You can't be going, is that lens sharp? Is it sharp? Is it sharp? You know. This is just like the pretty people that are drunk, looking at a pretty chick across the bar. It's like, hey, and she's pretty, and you go, yeah, but she's a hooker, and she's got various sexually transmitted diseases. I don't care, she's pretty. That's exactly what these people that talk about sharp lenses remind me. It's like, she's pretty. It's like, yeah, she's got some herpes sores going on if you look a little closer, and you will regret it the next day. It's how I respond to these people that talk about, is the lens sharp or not? It's like, well, is sharpness everything to you? Yeah, it is. Like, oh, really? So that's all that matters to you is how great the resolution of a lens is. Yeah, what else is there? The answer is a lot! A lot. Okay? Take that into consideration. Everything I said here is factual, it's truthful, it's undeniable, it's irrefutable, it's logical, and it is correct. Thank you for watching so much. Let me know how I can help you. Like this video, you can drop me $1 or $2, or you can send me out a pound of coffee, or I'd rather have Scottish or shortbread cookies. That's what I'd actually like to have. But thanks for watching. Catch you later. Bye.